Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. Just to recall, in the last lecture we had seen how to construct message authentication codes which are secure even against a computationally unbounded adversary. So, in this lecture we will introduce another interesting cryptographic primitive called cryptographic hash functions, which has got several applications where with one of the applications being the construction of efficient message authentication codes. So, we will introduce the formal definition of cryptographic hash functions, and we will also formally define what exactly we mean by the collision resistance property of cryptographic hash functions, and then we will discuss the Merkle-Damgard paradigm, which is an interesting paradigm and used for construction of several practical collision resistant hash functions. So, let us begin with the definition of cryptographic hash functions. So, this primitive has got tremendous applications both in the symmetric key as well as in the public key setting, and the primary application of this cryptographic primitive is data compression, and it has got several other applications like construction of message authentication code as a key derivation function for deduplication purpose, virus fingerprinting and so on. So, on a very high level, a cryptographic hash function is a many to one function mapping arbitrary length bit strings to fixed length bit strings. So, the domain is the set of bit strings which can be of any length, and the output is always of a fixed length, say little l, where little l is some function of the security parameter. And property wise we require many properties from this cryptographic hash functions, but the main property which we are interested in and which we will discuss in this course is the collision resistance property. And on a very high level or informally, what exactly collision resistance means, that an adversary or an algorithm which is computationally bounded, even though if it is knowing the description of this function h, should not be able to find out a collision or a pair of distinct inputs which gives you the same hash value, right, except with some negligible probability. That means it should be very difficult computationally to find collisions in a reasonable amount of time. So, let us formally define what exactly we mean by collision resistance. So, that is modeled by an experiment, and in the experiment we are given the description of a publicly known hash function, right, and name of the experiment is hash collision experiment, and we have a polynomial time adversary, and basically the goal of the adversary to come up with a pair of messages, say m comma m star, from the domain of this hash function. And the security definition here is that we say that the function h is a collision resistant hash function or CRHF if for every polynomial time adversary participating in this experiment, the probability that the adversary could come up with a colliding pair, namely with a pair of distinct inputs m comma m star, such that both m as well as m star gives you the same hash value, is upper bounded by some negligible function, right. So, basically the goal of the challenger, the goal of the adversary here is to take the description of your hash function and come up with a pair of colliding inputs. If it is able to do that with a non-negligible advantage, then we say that the function h is not a collision resistant hash function, otherwise we say that the function h is a collision resistant hash function. Notice that the function h is not a keyed function, it is an unkeyed function, and there is and the function h is a deterministic function, there is no internal randomness present in the inside the function h, right. So, even though the function h is deterministic, there is no key, the challenge for the adversary is to come up with a pair of colliding inputs. It turns out that there is a slight technical issue with the above definition, in the sense that if the above is the definition of collision resistant hash function, then we cannot define any function h, or we cannot construct any function h which satisfies the above definition. This is because, as I said, that the domain of the function h is the set of all bit strings, and which is significantly larger than the size of the codomain, because your codomain consists of only strings of length little l bits, and that is why the function h is a many to one function, and as a result there are always collisions which are present in the function h, which follows from your pigeonhole principle, because if you have a many to one function, then definitely you will have multiple inputs x comma x star or m comma m star which have the same hash output. And there always exist a adversary which I say a collision adversary which could be hard coded with such a colliding pair of inputs m comma m star. That means if I if such an adversary A sub call participates in this hash collision experiment, then it can simply output the message pair m star, which is hard coded in the adversary. Adversary do not have to do any step, it is a constant time attack. That means fundamentally the way we have defined a collision resistant property, it is not possible to satisfy step definition against any construction of hash function, right. However, interestingly it turns out that most of the practical instantiations of hash functions, which some of which we are going to discuss, there are no collisions which are hard coded in their design. That means we believe that there exists no adversary which already knows or which is hard coded with a pair of inputs m star, which constitutes a collision for the corresponding hash function. So, that is why technically even though there is a challenge associated with the definition, we stick to this definition of collision resistant hash function. I also stress that the security property or the collision resistant property does not demand that there should not be any collision in the function h, because by design itself it is a many to one function, and as I said by pigeonhole principle it follows that there will be several collisions which are present with respect to the function h. The challenge is to design a polytime algorithm or a computationally efficient algorithm which, when given the description of the function h, could come up with at least one such pair of collision with a non-negligible advantage. That is a security requirement, or that is what we mean by the collision resistant property. So, now we have the definition of collision resistant hash function. So, we will be interested to see whether indeed it is possible to design such functions or not. And what we are going to discuss is a well known paradigm which is called as Merkle-Damgard paradigm, and it is a very well known two stage approach which is used for the design of several practical instantiations of collision resistant hash functions, such as the MD5 hash function and several hash functions in the SHA-256 family. So, as I said, it is a two stage approach for constructing a collision resistant hash function. So, in stage 1 what we do is we aim to design a fixed length collision resistant compression function. And why it is fixed length? Because unlike a collision resistant hash function where the domain could consist of any string of any length, here the domain is fixed in the sense that it can take inputs only of size n plus l bits. And it is called a compression function because it takes an input of size n plus l bits and produces an output of size n bits. So, definitely the output size is shorter or less than the input size, and that is why it is a compression function. So, pictorially you can interpret that we are interested in stage 1 to construct some function h which takes an input of size n plus l bits, which can be passed into two input halves, the first half of size n bits and the second half of size little l bits. So, that is why you can interpret the domain of this function h to be the Cartesian product of an x set which consists of strings of length n bits and another set y which consists of strings of length little l bits, and given a string of length n plus l bits as the input, the goal of this compression function should be to produce an output of size little n bits such that this little h function should be a collision resistant function. That means, given the description of this function h, it should be difficult to come up with a pair of collision in polynomial amount of time with a significant probability. Once we have such a compression function, fixed length compression function, in stage 2 what we do is we apply this well known Merkle-Damgard paradigm to construct a collision resistant hash function which we denote by big H, which can take any string as input of length up to say big L bits. There is no restriction on the input size. The input could be of size 1 bit, 2 bit, or it could be any string of length up to big L bits, and it gives you an output of belonging to the set X, right. So, that is what we will do in stage 2, and this the construction in stage 2 is a very generic construction in the sense it can take any fixed length compression function without going into the underlying details of that compression function, and magically it will give you the collision resistant function big H which you are interested to construct. So, what we are going to discuss now is what we exactly do in stage 2. That means, we will assume we are given a fixed length collision resistant compression function little h, and then we will see how we apply the Merkle-Damgard paradigm and get the collision resistant hash function big H. Later in the next lecture we will see what exactly we do for stage 1, that means how exactly we construct this candidate little h compression function. So, our goal is the following: we are given a fixed length compression function taking inputs from the Cartesian product of x set and y set and giving you an output from the x set, and the x set basically consists of strings of length little n bits and the y set consists of strings of length little l bits, and our goal is to construct this function big H, which can take any binary string of length up to big L bits and give you a fixed size output, namely a string of length little n bits. So, if you are wondering what exactly are the values of little n and little l for the practical instantiations of hash functions. So, for your information, for the SHA-256 hash function, the value of little n is 256 and the value of little l is 512 bits, right. So, the first thing that we do while applying the Merkle-Damgard paradigm is that we take the input big M for the hash function big H which we are interested to construct, and this input big M is a binary string of length up to length big L bits. So, we apply some encoding function here, and the encoding is done to ensure that the encoded input is a multiple of little l bits. And the reason we want to ensure that the encoded input is a multiple of little l bits is that when we are going to apply the Merkle-Damgard paradigm, we are going to divide our encoded input into several blocks of little l bits, and we will be iteratively applying the fixed length compression function. So, pictorially you can imagine that you are given this input, we apply some publicly known deterministic encoding function, and the encoded output is denoted by this hat m, which consists of the original m and concatenated with some padded bits, and together this original m concatenated with the padded bits will now consist of several blocks of little l bits, and the number of such blocks of little l bits will be big L by little l plus 1. So, you might be wondering that why this plus 1. So, this will be clear soon. So, what exactly is the form of this padded bits? Well, the padded bits is defined as follows. It will start with 1 followed by the required number of zeros concatenated with the binary representation of the number of little l bit blocks which are present in the original m, right. So, you have the original m which is the actual input which you want to hash using the big H function which you are interested to construct. So, we count the number of little l bit blocks which are present in the non encoded input, and the binary representation of the number of such blocks is this representation, namely the angle within the number s within the angle brackets. So, the padded bit which we are actually appending to the bits of the message which we want to hash is of this form. We have 1 followed by the required number of zeros followed by the binary representation of the number of blocks of little l bits which are present in M, and typically the number of bits which are allocated for this binary representation of the number of L bit blocks present in M is a 64 bit field, but you can have this field consisting of more number of bit, but I am quoting this number with respect to one of the practical instantiations of hash functions, namely the SHA function. So, that means you could have up to 2 to the power 64 little l number of blocks present in your original input M, and each block consists of little l bits. So, that gives you an upper bound on the maximum size of the message which you can hash using this hash function big H which you are interested to construct, right. So, again if I take the example of SHA-256, my L is 512 and I could have up to 2 to the power 64 such blocks. So, that gives you the maximum length of the message which you can encode, right. 2 to the power that much length string you can hash using the function h of m d which you are interested to construct. Interestingly, if your message big M which you want to hash is consisting of number of blocks of little l bit, if its length is already a multiple of little l bit, that means you do not need to actually do any padding, but then how exactly the receiver who is going to receive the message will come to know whether the padding has happened or not. So, if the message length is already a multiple of little l, then what exactly we do is we do the padding, where padding basically consists of a full dummy block starting with the representation 1 0 zeros and the binary representation of the number of bits, number of blocks of little l bits which are already present in the message. So, that is why irrespective of whether the message length is already a multiple of little l bits or not, we actually do the padding, and that is why this +1 is present in the number of blocks of little l bits in the encoded input, right. So, if the m is already a multiple of little l, then you have these many number of blocks of little l bits, and we are actually doing a padding, namely we are adding a full dummy block. So, that is why the number of blocks of little l bits which could be present in the encoded input is actually this, right. So, now once you have the encoded input which you want to hash, right. So, the way we do the hash of the encoded, compute the hash of the encoded input is that we iteratively apply the fixed length compression, collision resistant compression function that we are available with, and we do it iteratively in the sense we apply a invocation of h over the current block of the encoded input and the previous outcome of the instantiation of the fixed length collision function. So, imagine that this is your pictorial representation of the encoded input consisting of blocks of several blocks of little l bits, and I am highlighting the last block because the last block may not be fully consisting of the input bits, it could be consisting of the padded bits as well, right. So, other than that all the remaining blocks are not highlighted. So, the way we iteratively apply the little h function here is as follows. So, the first invocation is on the first block of little l bits of the encoded input, and along with an IV which we denote as T0 belonging to the set X. We will soon see what exactly is the value of IV. And now you see the invocation of H, it takes an input of size L plus n bits, right. It is basically taking an input from the X set and it is taking an input from your Y set, which satisfies the semantic of my little h function, and it will give you an output belonging to the set X. So, the output that comes out of the first invocation of the h function is denoted by T1, it will be of size n bits, and we take the next chunk of L bits from the encoded input and apply the next invocation of the h function, and output is denoted as T2, which will be again of size little n bits, and we continue like that till we are done with the last invocation of the h function, which operates over the last block of the encoded input of size little l bits and the outcome of the previous invocation of the h function, and the final output of the overall hash function big H which we have constructed for the input m is considered to be the outcome of the final invocation of the h function. So, that is how we are going to hash the message m, right. So, that is why the function h here is applied iteratively here, and this also tells you why exactly we want the encoded input to be a multiple of little l, because in each iteration we take one chunk of little l bits and apply the h function on the previous outcome of the h function, right. So, now you might be wondering what exactly is an IV, is it some random entity or not. So, as I said, the hash functions are deterministic functions. So, IV is not a random value, it is a fixed publicly known value. You can take it say all zeros which set once for all, or for some practical instantiations of the hash function this IV is set to some very complicated string. And these intermediate variables T0, T1, T2, Ts minus 1, Ts, which we actually obtain along this sequence of chaining process, they are called as chaining variables. So, now let us see whether indeed applying this Merkle-Damgard paradigm iteratively over a fixed length collision resistant compression function ends up giving you a collision resistant hash function or not. So, we are going to prove that if indeed the function little h is a fixed length compression function and as well as collision resistant, then by applying the Merkle-Damgard paradigm, the function big H which we have obtained, which can hash any bit string of length up to big L bits, indeed is a collision resistant function. And the proof will be by reduction or by a contradiction, namely we can prove that assume if you have a polytime adversary which I denote as A sub m d, which when given the description of the Merkle-Damgard paradigm and the description of your fixed length compression function outputs a pair of distinct messages or a collision for the bigger function or the function big H that we have constructed. That means the algorithm A sub m d outputs the pair m comma m dash, where m and m dash are distinct, but still the hash value of m and m dash operated with respect to the big H function is same, and the probability of collision here is say f of n, where f of n is a non negligible function. So, what we are going to prove is that if we have such an adversary A sub m d, then using this adversary A of m d, we can construct, or we show how to construct another polytime adversary A sub h, which can give you a collision for your fixed length collision resistant compression function little h with the same probability with which the adversary A sub m d could have given you a collision for the function h sub m d. And basically the idea of this adversary A sub h is that the adversary A sub h, its goal is to find out a collision for the little h function, namely its goal is to come up with a pair t comma m and t star comma m star such that the output of this little h function on these two inputs is the same. And to find this the pair t comma m and t star comma m star, what your adversary A sub h does is basically it parses the sequence of hash chain which your Merkle-Damgard paradigm would have created while hashing this message big M and for hashing the message m dash, where the message m and m dash are produced by the adversary A sub m d. So, pictorially this is how the hash value for the message big M would have been computed as per the Merkle-Damgard paradigm, right. The message m would have been first converted into an encoded input, and then we would have applied the function little h iteratively, and in the same way to compute the value of the function h sub m d on the message m dash, we would have applied the function little h iteratively as this. We would have first converted the input m dash into an encoded input, and then we would have applied the function h iteratively and would have obtained the value of hash value on the message m dash. So, what basically the adversary A sub h is going to do is it is going to compare these two hash chains, the hash chain on the left side and the hash chain on right side, and our claim is that if m comma m dash constitutes a collision where m and m dash are distinct, then definitely there will be one collision, at least one collision present at some place in the hash chain of m and the hash chain of m dash, right. So, let us see how exactly the collision for the function little h is going to be obtained based on these two hash chains. So, since the hash value of the message m and the hash value of the message m dash are same, right, because that is a collision for your function h sub m d. So, what we are going to do is we are going to focus on the last invocation of the little h function in the hash chain for the message m and the last invocation of the little h function in the hash chain for the message m dash, right. So, the last invocation for the message m is on your left hand side and the last invocation for the hash chain on m dash is on the right hand side, and as you can see you have the inputs mu and tu minus 1 for the hash chain for m, and the input for the hash chain for m dash is the input mv dash and tv minus 1 dash. So, there could be two possibilities. If this joint input tu minus 1 concatenated with mu is different from t dash v minus 1 concatenated with m dash v, then that itself creates a collision for your little h function, because what is happening here is that even though the combined input here is different from the combined input here, their output with respect to the little h function are same, because that is what is the overall output of the hash value big H for the message m and m dash. So, if we are in this case, then we have spotted a collision very easily, namely we have spotted the collision with respect to the last invocation of the little h function. Otherwise, it implies that the combined input tu minus 1 and mu is the same as the combined input t dash sub v minus 1 and m dash sub v. and that automatically means that the number of blocks which are present in the message M and M dash are same, namely u is equal to v, because we are in the case when this mu and M dash sub v are same, right. And remember, mu and M dash sub v are going to consist of some number of bits of the actual message and the padded bits. So, combinedly they are the same, that means the number of blocks of little l bits which are present in the message M and the number of blocks of little l bits which are present in the message M dash are actually same. So, if we are in the else case, that means we have the last invocation of the little h function in the hash chain of M and the hash chain of M dash does not constitute a collision. So, what we have to do is now we have to go one step back in the hash chain, in the respective hash chains, and focus on the second to last invocation of the little h function in the respective hash chains, right. So, if we continue in the else case, we are here, we have distinct messages M and M dash, and now we are focusing on the second to last invocation of the h function in their respective hash chains. And now again we have two possible cases. If the joint input to the little h function in the respective hash chains are different, then we have spotted a collision for the little h function, because now we are in the case where even though the combined input to the second to last invocation of the little h function in the respective hash chains are different, their outputs are same, right, because the outputs are t sub u minus 1 and t dash sub u minus 1, which we already know they are same because we are under that case. But again, if it so happen that the combined input for the second to last invocation of the h functions in the respective hash chains are equal, right, then it gives you the implication that f sum u and f dash sum u are same and combined input are same. Then we have to go one step back in the respective hash chains, and we have to focus on the third to last invocation of the little h function in the respective hash chains. So, again if we now go to the third to last invocation of the little h function in the respective hash chains, we are in this condition, and again we have to argue whether the combined input to the little h function in the respective hash chains are same or not. If they are not, then this instance of h basically creates a collision for the little h function, where we have a pair of inputs which are different, but the output, namely t dash sub u minus 2 and t sub u minus 2 are same. But if not, then again we have to go to the previous invocation of the little h function in the respective hash chains and so on. So, what basically we are doing here is we are parsing the hash chain of the M and M dash respectively, and eventually the claim is that eventually we will end up finding a collision, because if we do not find collision and if we end up parsing from right to left and come to the beginning of the message first block of M and the first block of M dash, then it means that even though we have distinct M and M dash, all the blocks of M and M dash are same, which is going to be a contradiction. But since M and M dash are different, because that constitutes a collision for your overall hash function big H sub M d, definitely there will be a collision which will be spotted with respect to the little h function. So, that proves that if indeed our little h function is a fixed length compression function and collision resistant, then by applying the Merkle-Damgard paradigm, the overall function which we are going to obtain is also collision resistant. That means, in poly time it will not be possible to come up with a pair of distinct inputs which gives you the same hash value. So, that brings me to the end of this lecture. Just to summarize, in this lecture we started discussing about an interesting cryptographic primitive called cryptographic hash function. We have seen the definition of collision resistance with respect to the cryptographic hash functions. Of course, there are several other properties for cryptographic hash functions like pre-image resistance and second pre-image resistance, but we are not going to discuss those properties because we will not be using them in this course. We also discussed about the Merkle-Damgard paradigm, which is a well known paradigm used in several practical instantiations of cryptographic hash function, and what basically Merkle-Damgard paradigm does is it takes any fixed length collision resistant compression function, apply a collision resistant hash function for any size input. Thank you.